We have one more thing left on stage 2 before we enter a break. And it's not a small thing because we're going to do a chapter highlight. And this is going to be a chapter which is pretty dear to me. I know the organizer and organizers of this chapter pretty well is the Service Design New York chapter. They have sent in a great video by Natalie Kuhn, which coincidentally I've published a podcast episode with yesterday. So go ahead, check it out on the Service Design Show on my LinkedIn feed. But now Natalie is not on a podcast. She's on a video about the Service Design Network. And I'm going to play that video for you right now. And don't leave after that video because I have a short few announcements before we hit the break. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you what it looks like in the Service Design New York chapter.
Hello and happy annual Service Design Network Global Conference, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you're enjoying all the time listening, learning, exchanging thoughts, and generally expanding your minds within these sessions. My name is Natalie Kuhn. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm beaming in from downtown New York City. I'm here to represent the SDN New York chapter. I'm one of 3 co-founders and organizers. Kathleen and Antonio say hello from Long Beach and Brooklyn, respectively. Before we jump into our most recent activities, I wanted to provide a little bit of context about the SDN New York chapter. We've been around for over 3 years and have run almost 50 events. I mention our meetup community because that's really where this all began. We've expanded into Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, a variety of different channels and been connecting with folks in all different ways since the pandemic began, as well as prior. So if you're curious about anything that's shared today or want to get to know us a little bit better, highly recommend you follow us on Meetup. And then from there, we have all the different social media channels that you can engage with. We'd love to have you join us during any of our sessions. For the most part, we meet on the second Tuesday of every month. In the past, we've offered up to 7 event formats, including talks, panels, workshops, speed networking, service safaris, social outings, and one-on-one mentorship. And within New York, we really believe in these 3 things: creating a welcoming and safe space for everyone, having all of our events be highly interactive as best as we can, not only between the speaker, facilitator, and participant, but between all the participants as well. We also aim to have consistency. I mentioned the second Tuesday of every month, just so that we can plan more autonomously as organizers, but then also all of the folks who would like to attend can plan accordingly and have a sense of when to look out for our next session. I want to show you some photos of what our events look like prior to the pandemic that I'm sure we'll get back to someday soon. But really, it's about bringing people together to create something, to gain a deeper understanding, to learn by doing. Whether they're engaging with a speaker facilitator who's been around in the industry for years and years and years, or maybe they're even learning from one of their peers who's practicing brand new content and seeing how that resonates with the group. So it's a lot of exploration, it's a lot of creation together, it's a lot of hearing one another, learning from one another, coming together in this space of shared experiences, or maybe not shared experiences, and learning from one another is, I guess, the bottom line. And it's really the core of why Kathleen, Antonio, and I got into this. These smiling faces, these folks coming together is why we keep running events and have done so for the last almost 4 years now, I suppose. So not only did we have indoor events, but we also offered a variety of different outdoor exciting events too. These are from our service safaris. One was at the Central Park Zoo. The other was where groups each looked at 3 different pizza spots within downtown New York City. So if you haven't participated in a service safari before, it's a lot of fun. You go out and experience a service and evaluate essentially all of the different elements of the service or the offering. You look at where it succeeded, where it failed, and talk about opportunities for change. So again, we did this with the Central Park Zoo, and then most recently across a variety of different pizza places within New York. How fitting is that? So obviously our events look a little bit different in recent months. but we still have tried to bring the essence of what we were doing in person into our online experiences. So that's why I wanted to show that contrast is, although we're not in the same format as we once were, we're doing our very best to bring people together and again, create together, learn from one another, engage, be in a safe space where they can share, interact, and get to know one another over the long term and really feel that they're a part of a larger community. Some of our most recent events, I'll just read through some of these. We've had a fellowship panel with the NYC Mayor's Office, and really talking about, I'll bring this up in a little bit, moving away from practitioner-centered toward community-led. I'll get into what that really means and what they were talking about there. We've also had a SCAD student project showcase, so having students bring their work and us giving them feedback, support, encouragement, and inspiration as best we can as we are in the industry now. Max Michel, I'll mention in a little bit, had done a workshop earlier in the year around overcoming imposter syndrome and reclaiming our inner power. We have also had a variety of different workshops around designing for equity, inclusion, and impact, as well as understanding our power and privilege within design. We also had a wonderful partnership with the the Emergency Design Collective that came out of the pandemic, and they were really looking at all these gaps and opportunities within the pandemic to improve the experiences, or really to try to come against or to evolve a lot of the problematic areas within our healthcare system within the United States, as well as any other experiences folks who have been in the pandemic have had. So it's rather broad, but a really incredible group. You should check them out. And finally, one more event to mention, creating collective impact, service design in the center of good. And that was really about social services and all the different ways within our community that we can leverage service design to make a positive impact in our world. Finally, probably the most important part of this conversation is really, how is New York taking a stand when it comes to this conference theme as humans first, and then also as designers. So for us locally, when it comes to New York, we believe in coming together to listen, learn, and truly hold ourselves accountable for systems, outcomes, services, and products that have both intended and unintended consequences. I really linger on that latter part because there are a lot of unintended consequences or unknown things that we might be a part of that we really need to bring to the light for further assessment and then work on dismantling. So we've been looking really, I would say, deep inside ourselves, whether it's through local events within our community. You can notice some peaceful protests on the right-hand side, or through education, ways that we can learn more about perspectives outside of our own, overcome some of those blind spots. And when I say overcome, you can never truly have the lived experience of someone in a community outside of your own, but at the very least you can listen and try to understand, and then try to take action to support that group, that community, that individual, and whatever they've been experiencing. So I mentioned Max Michel as really a design activist, a DEI consultant, somebody who's been really, I would say, incredible to work with within New York. Inspirational is the word I was looking for. But so involved in bringing a lot of these topics, and they're not the only one. There are so many folks that are talking through what it means to come from different communities and to experience the world, because often, and I find myself guilty of this often, it's hard to think about what the world feels like for someone who is not you. So I'd say a lot of the theme around New York has been trying to gather a diverse array of perspectives, listen and see how we can work together as a community to break a lot of these systems and poorly designed products and services down so that they are helping everyone versus creating harm for some while benefiting a small few. So I would say that's the root of it. I have another picture here. I mentioned the NYC Mayor's Office, who came to speak to us really about breaking down this idea of being practitioner-led and moving towards being community-led. That's something that I think we often fall into this trap of bringing a community in for one part of the service development or product development life cycle, and then not necessarily going back to them or not having them be truly integrated within what we're creating. Or often worse, you could debate that after this, but really not even knowing who you should be including in order to have a diverse array of perspectives and inclusive of the people who will be experiencing the product or service directly. So there are a lot of opportunities for change within our process as designers. And that's something that's a great segue, I suppose, to this last section here, which is really around a variety of groups and resources, wherever you are in your journey. If you're starting today and trying to understand diversity, equity, inclusion within design, or maybe you're well on your journey and you've already been a part of all of these groups or read all these books, but this is a good place to start. And this is where we've drawn a lot of our inspiration within the SDN New York chapter. I highly recommend this book on the right-hand side, Community-Led Practices to Build the Worlds We Need. There are also books I didn't mention here. Ruined by Design is an interesting one. But I would say really coming from the New York perspective, it's getting out there, educating yourself, understanding where we have faults, being more humble about that, and knowing that we can change together as a community. We can do this work. We need to be having these conversations. I'm so thrilled to have this as a conference theme. I hope it continues to be a part of everything that we do. But ultimately, there are tons and tons of resources. This is really just skimming the surface. Go out there, find the work that others have been doing for decades around how we can provide more equitable services and products, and really how we can break down so many of the systems that I would say are preventing us from being the best we can be as a society. So look out for one another, and have a wonderful rest of your conference. Bye.
Thank you, Natalie, for the awesome work with the Service Design Network New York chapter. Awesome events. Hope that you'll be able to do them live in person back again soon. Almost time for break on stage number 2, and this will be a long break on stage 2, but in 30 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check my calendar. The calendar is over here. Yes, 5:30. So in 28 minutes, you can go back to stage number 1 and get a fireside chat with Danielle Burka. And after that, you'll see a keynote presentation by Kim Goodwin on power and design. So that's going to be on stage number 1. You need to switch video feeds, switch stages. At 7:30 my time, so that's in 2.5 hours, I'll be back on this stage number 2, with a few more presentations, a few more talks. So if you've been enjoying the presentations over here, make sure you'll be back at 7:30, but that's a long way out. For now, take a break, 27 minutes, and then go back to stage number 1 to enjoy 2 very interesting talks and speakers. Hope you're enjoying the conference so far, and I'll see you back in a bit. Thank you.